And I guess as far as the process goes, we've had teachers, administrators, nurses, all types of different people involved in the committee work on this. And then in addition to, we also did surveys of staff and surveys of the community, which we returned, I think, about 700 households once. So that's more than 700 kids, that's just 700 households. So we feel like that's a really, really good survey, especially getting that many results back. So a couple things. I know today administrators started calling staff members and just kind of gauging where they were at and what we needed to do to make sure that we were ready for staff when they come back on August 25th, and what things they were feeling maybe concerned about, and get those kind of needs taken care of if we can. And then I also met with one of the other pieces. I met with Mr. Wink, and sometime next week we're going to sit down and start looking at how we can do the activity side of everything and what that may look like, crowds and kids and locker rooms, and how we may start trying to attack the activities portion of it, so that maybe we can have some activities as well. So I'm going to turn it over. I think the very first part is you're going to talk about the survey. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So why don't you go ahead.
Press the mute button once. Should turn green.
All right, can you hear me? Okay, all right.
Yes, as Dr. Robinson said, I would like to take time to thank our committee members. We started this process back in May, and along the way, initially, we were looking at learning plans, like what is school going to look like when we return in the fall. And then, of course, that morphed and developed into, cleaning procedures and health protocols. And so I feel as if the committee did an amazing job addressing all of the concerns. Just to share with you, if you just Google recommendations for school entry, you're going to find enough information to last weeks, months, years. So the resources, we kind of narrowed our approach and used specific resources when creating our plan. So we used, of course, the Center for Disease Control. They had specific plans that addressed re-entry into schools. Children's Mercy provided a lot of information for us. Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, MISHA, of course, we looked at the local county health officers for guidance. The school district resides in more than one county, so we leaned heavily on Clinton County due to the fact that a largest portion of the district resides in Clinton County. Of course, the committee meetings, we had excellent feedback. Is this working? Okay. All right. We had excellent feedback from our committee members. As Dr. Robinson mentioned, we had administrators, we had faculty, we had teachers from all buildings, we had special education, we had transportation, nurses, and all of those people, or several of those people, were parents that had children enrolled in the district. So that was a great resource for us as well. And then, of course, webinars provided by our school lawyers, by Ed Council, by Missouri Association of School Administrators, MOASBO, and then Nicholson and Toole. But a lot of the information that we used for the finalization of the draft came from those parent and staff surveys. And so I want to take a little bit of time to go over some of the findings from those surveys. As Dr. Robinson mentioned, we did have 711 households complete the surveys. The very first question we asked our families, when returning in the fall, what type of instruction would you like to see? 82%, and this was, they could check more than one, so keep that in mind. 82% agreed that they would like to return to face-to-face instruction in the fall, typical of what we've been doing in the past prior to the building closures. 44% elected for the hybrid, which means like an A-B schedule, or part of the kids coming in the district, part of them staying home and doing online. And 32% preferred online only. They did not want to re-enter the buildings. Another 20% shared that they would seek outside opportunities for online instruction if the district did not provide that for them. We also understand that there can be some underlying health concerns of family members or of our students. So we wanted to ask that question, do you feel comfortable returning in the fall? Due to the fact that you have no health concerns, your child, your student has no health concerns, or someone in the family close to them. 92% shared that they felt comfortable, that there really were not any underlying health concerns. We did take that a step further and asked if they would share some information regarding their health concerns or their specific concerns, so we could contact those families and see if we could create individualized plans for them. Transportation, we spent some time on this just due to the fact buses are only so big, and it's very difficult to practice social distancing. So we wanted to ask our families, how comfortable are you with loading your child on a bus? 54% shared that they would continue as normal as they did last year. They would ride the bus. 7% would change from bus rider to being a walker or a car rider. 20% was undecided at the time of the survey, and then 19% would continue. That was their normal routine. Again, we asked families, we gave a list of factors for them to consider and asked for them to select all of those things that would make them feel more comfortable when returning in the fall and sending their child to school. Overwhelmingly, 556, and you're going to see this as a pattern, felt that cleaning classrooms, having those sanitized, cleaning them prior to students coming in and exiting, that was going to provide them with some level of comfort and make them feel better about transitioning back. Having hand sanitizers and disinfecting things available throughout the buildings and classrooms. Having symptom checks of the employees, 410 families responded that that would make them feel more comfortable. 384, following guidelines to the extent possible. Maintaining social distances, 304 responded that that would make them feel better. 76 responded with nothing, and then 86, we offered other, a comment box. And so 86 provided some other comments. When just asking just the general question, do you plan to send your child to school in the fall? 92 shared that yes, they plan to send their child to school in the fall. Again, we gave them a list of primary concerns so we could kind of narrow that focus and ask them to pick from the list. They could pick more than one. So 385, again, went back to that classes and areas not being disinfected. Another concern was availability of disinfecting products, so hand sanitizer, and students being able to wash their hands frequently and have access to wipe down and sanitize areas that were being used. Public health recommendations not being followed. 238 had concerns with their child just returning to a schedule, coming back to school and being off a schedule for that long. 155 of the parents shared that it was going to be the in-person interaction. So we didn't ask specifically whether that was students' interactions or having interactions with the teachers. 78 of our parents responded that child care or care of family members while ill was going to be a concern of theirs. And then 56 responded that transportation was a primary concern. We did want to find out some information about how the parents felt or where they felt their child was at academically with the building closures. Distance learning worked for some, it didn't work for others. We definitely wanted to ask that question. 95% believed that their child was ready for the next grade level or within a matter of time at the beginning of the year would be able to be caught up by the faculty and the teachers. With the knowledge that it will be imperative that if teachers, if students are sick, if they have any symptoms of COVID, we wanted to ask our families, are you prepared with child care plans? 92% had said that, had mentioned that, or selected that they had already prepared and secured those child care plans, so in case they had to stay home. So that was some good news. Dr. Robinson mentioned we also surveyed our staff. Out of about 250, we had 170 respond. So this included cooks, custodians, everyone, teachers. Again, we asked the same question that we asked of the families. They could select more than one, but How many wanted to return for full-time in-person instruction? 89 selected that. 59% of our staff selected a hybrid model, and again, that was like an A-B schedule or an alternating schedule. 11% shared that they would prefer online, offering online instruction only. And then 4%, we also wanted to ask our staff if there was any individuals that had some health concerns that would cause them some anxiety when returning in the fall. And 4% of those surveyed shared that. Again, we asked for those factors increasing the comfort, and again, you're going to find that sanitizing supplies being available and classrooms being cleaned, sanitized, and disinfected led the responses. Following recommendations to the extent possible, symptom checks of employees, and then the ability to maintain social distancing to group allowed. 5 shared that there was nothing that was going to make them feel comfortable. When asking for the primary concerns, again, the data shared again, it came back to cleaning supplies, consistent use of those cleaning supplies. Our teachers did feel a greater concern, more so than the families, that it was going to be readjustment to the school life. 77 again, whether the rooms were properly disinfected. 76 responded with how they had concerns as to how they were going to address the learning gap that occurred when we had to close those buildings. 74 was exposure to the virus itself, recommendations not being followed, questions of when to send a student to the nurse and when to allow them to stay in class was also a concern. And then responses of 33 or less included, in-person interactions, the use of Google Classroom, and I apologize, having no concerns. Sorry about that. So based on our surveys, based on CDC, based on all the recommendations of the webinars, there were specific areas that we felt like we needed to address that were stemming from our staff concerns and from our parent concerns. And those included, like I said, the cleaning and disinfecting, the ability to social distance, meal service, what does that look like? Breakfast, lunch, snacks, transitions, how do we get the kids from one room to the next room, practicing social distancing? Does that look different in primary school compared to middle school compared to high school? Recess, communication, how are we going to communicate and what will we communicate to the families if there is a positive test result? Symptoms and temperature checks, should we do that? Should we not do that? Should we do it with students, faculty, both, neither? We addressed transportation and then health protocol and then the facial coverings. So those two at the bottom were the ones that we have spent some time on. And I'm sure, as you imagine, if you've watched any part of the news, those are the two that can be debated the most, and that would be the same with us. So facial coverings. So survey comments, I mentioned that there was another box where faculty and staff and families could note other concerns. Facial coverings did show up. I don't know that it was equal, and I don't have exact numbers, but there was favoritism for requiring them, and then there was also argument by not requiring them. Our initial recommendations by the committee were to strongly encourage those masks, but we ended up amending the plan to where we requested grades 6 through 12 are required to wear facial coverings, and grades pre-K through 5, it would be highly recommended. The reason we went with that, CDC recommendations, and I have copied and pasted it there, but they recommend that people wear cloth-based coverings in public settings and when around people who don't live in their household, especially when other social distancing measures are difficult to maintain. When we look at Parkview and CIS, we feel we're going to be able to cohort those students, so those students will be with the same kids all day long. They will see in the same classroom. So if moving out, which right now our thought is like special classes. The teacher will go into the classroom, so those kids will remain in that classroom. So disinfecting and cleaning is not as much of a issue, I guess. So that's the reason why we are recommending that it's just the 6 through 12. 6 through 12 are transitioning daily. It's more difficult to track the classes that they're in, and it's also just harder to practice that social distancing during transition times. Health protocols: when do we send a kid home? When do we keep the kid? When can they return? CDC offered the guidance for this, and we've used their recommendations. And so if a kiddo tests positive, before returning, they have to be fever-free 72 hours without medications, symptoms improve, and 10 days have passed since the first symptom. Or if their doctor or physician provides them with a return to school or return to work note, then they can return. If the student is experiencing symptoms, is not going to be tested, the family has no intentions of testing, then again, it follows the same guidelines as testing positive. So they have to be fever-free, medication-free, symptoms improve, and 10 days have passed, or go to the doctor and receive a note. If students are exposed to a person testing positive, and that's going to happen, then we're asking families to monitor the health of their child, monitor for symptoms. Faculty and staff will also be asked to do this, to seek medical advice, but then they would follow the protocol of experiencing symptoms, which would mean that they would have to stay home until fever-free, symptom-free, 10 days have passed before they receive that doctor's note. In discussing the communication, this was another piece. Of course, with HIPAA, we cannot identify students, so the recommendation was to send information to those that needed to know. So notifications would be sent to individuals having thought to have had direct contact with people or persons testing positive. It will be much easier to do that in the primary grades, just due to the fact, like I said, we'll be cohorting those kiddos. But I think the key to communicating, aside from the notifications, is that as a faculty, as a staff, as a district, as a community, we continue to reinforce, if you do not feel well, you stay home. If you have any symptoms, you have to stay home. I think that's going to be key to communicating, and the plan involves that, discusses that. On a side note, we've had some questions raised about attendance. Attendance will not count against the kiddo, will not count against staff. So we're hoping with that people will stay home when they are sick. The learning plan recommendations that we have initially included in our draft is that school will start August 25th, and it will start with face-to-face instruction. We will have cleaning procedures, sanitation procedures, practice social distancing to the extent possible. Grades K through 12, though, we also understand that there are still some families that will not feel comfortable with that. So they will have the option of choosing online instruction. So, but we plan on starting August 25th and offering those choices to our families. We've also added some additional learning plans and scheduling considerations that we do not plan on implementing right away. These are not in any certain order, but we're looking at possibility of an A/B schedule. So we would split grades 6 through 12, and they would report for face-to-face instruction, but it would make the classroom sizes smaller. But instruction for grades K through 5 would be face-to-face. It would remain face-to-face, and they would continue with the Monday through Friday schedule. Another option that could be considered, grades 6 through 12 would be online only, Monday through Friday, and pre-K through 5 would receive that face-to-face And then the last option, which does not, is not, in my opinion, the best option would be just everyone's online and learning packets. No one's in the buildings. So, all right. So, in summary, we took the information, like I said, from the planning, and from that we created a narrative draft. Windows, what was it, Jeremy?
Windows P,
P?
I believe so.
And so, from those recommendations, we have created, like I said, a plan that we feel is solid. It aligns with CDC recommendations. It doesn't include every word that's in the CDC plan. This itself is just a quick reference guide for our families to utilize. The plan also includes narrative information, but again, we tried to cover those main topics that were found in the surveys as concerns. So facial coverings, our recommendation is that all staff wear facial coverings every day. Students in grades pre-K through 5 will be strongly encouraged, and students in grade 6 will be required to wear those. The committee also, again, recommended staying home if you're not feeling well. We also addressed the protocols associated with that, but when should you stay home? Students and staff will be asked to check their temperatures at home, and if they are 100 degrees or above, they need to stay home and not try to take Tylenol or ibuprofen and then come in the buildings. Staff, we will ask staff to require health daily questionnaires just regarding their health. Do you have any symptoms? Are you feeling okay? Are you having any fever? So that will occur daily, electronically. Students will be asked to monitor, and families will be asked to take temperatures of the students prior to loading the buses. And then, again, if they are experiencing any type of symptoms, they will be asked to stay home. Since the cleaning seemed to be of the greater concern, we've added a little bit more information regarding that. But again, it's having hand sanitizer available throughout the buildings, in all the classrooms, outside of the restrooms. Students will be asked to utilize hand sanitizer when entering and when leaving. Classroom surfaces are going to be wiped down. Clorox electrostatic sprayer will be used daily throughout classes. Water coolers, we will not utilize the water fountains. Instead, we will provide students with water coolers. Let's see. And of course, the cleaning protocol for throughout the day as well as the evening with our custodial staff will change. So there will be additional cleaning take place, additional lists, and sanitization that occurs. Again, with the transportation, there did seem to be some concerns with that. So transportation, Durham buses will be disinfecting the buses after every route. So they will also be using bleach and sanitizers to wipe down every surface of the bus, seats, handrails, windows, everything. Students will be assigned seats with family members, and so they will be expected to stay in those seats. Since we cannot social distance, we feel like this is the best plan. Drivers and monitors, they will actually do temperature checks every morning and health questionnaires prior to being allowed to do their routes. And then students in grades 6 through 12 will be required to wear masks while riding the bus, and the younger students will be we will highly recommend that they wear their masks when riding the bus and encourage them. I discussed the protocols. Again, that offers information as to when students and staff can return after being ill or showing symptoms or testing positive. As far as social distancing, this is difficult. I'll be honest, it's difficult in different grade levels. Depending on high school, it becomes more difficult than it is at Parkview, where there's fewer transitions. But students will remain in cohorts as much as possible, and that's fairly easy for us to do in grades pre-K through 5. It becomes more difficult at the middle school and at the high school. But we've already had discussions regarding when the bell rings, who is in the hall, what side of the hall are they on, what's the flow of traffic, how do we social distance. And so although it's more difficult at middle school and high school, it can be done. Breakfast, how are we going to offer breakfast? So breakfast meals will be offered in the classroom. Yes, we have had conversations with Dr. Collins at the middle school, and we are working on a schedule that will allow us to cohort some of our middle school classes. So that is in the works. Meals, we discussed meals will be offered in the classroom. There might be opportunity for some of those classes to utilize the lunchroom, but it will be limited to the amount of students that's allowed in there in order to allow for social distancing, so the 6 feet apart. Other options or other things with social distancing, shared supplies will not be allowed. Some of those things that we have to share, the Chromebooks, those will be disinfected prior to the student using them. When the student is finished, it will be disinfected and cleaned again, and students will be required to use hand sanitizer prior to using the Chromebooks. And that would be, like I said, with anything that we have to share, that we're limited on resources. Students will be encouraged to have their own supplies, of course, and not share those with other students, especially in the lower levels. All students pre-K through 12 are going to have assigned seats. Regardless of the class, regardless of whether it's lunch, all of those students will be assigned those seats. The thought behind that, we will be able to, if we do have a positive test, it will become easier for us to kind of assist the county offices with tracing those cases, and so all students will have those assigned seats. And as far as cooperative activities within the classrooms, that's pretty much, we will be doing those. So we've kind of changed the way that we're doing that. One other thing, as far as, and it is listed on there, visitors will not be allowed to visit the buildings. We do understand the value in having families in the buildings, but we just feel like at this time, we need to eliminate that and not have visitors come in the building. So other things that is addressed within the narrative plan, like I said, include transitions, just how we exit the building, how do we load the buses. All of that will be modified to the extent possible to accommodate for social distancing, to allow for our kids to be spread out. And so I feel, like I said, the committee put in a lot of work. We've been meeting since May and have continued to meet to create this draft plan. And so I asked board members, do you have any questions?
Thank you for your hard work.
Well, thank you.
Everybody who's on this. Lots of love.
Dr. Bedford, one thing I know that you had talked about that maybe you didn't mention that would help ease concerns on the buses was seating people from back to front so kids wouldn't have to pass other kids.
We had looked at that, and we had conversations with Durham buses. In order to do that, because of the way we load, we pick up Parkview students first. So we would have to put Parkview students throughout the bus, and then CIF students would have to pass them, middle school would have to pass them, and the high school would have to pass them. So that was eliminating the purpose. We were trying to load the back of the bus first.
Okay.
We can do that in the mornings, and we did discuss that. That's easier to do in the morning, but when we load in the afternoon, I don't think that's going to be an option. Just due to the fact that when we load the Parkview kids, they're going to have to be seated according to how they unload. And that means kids are going to be passing each other. So that's why I think it's further important for those kiddos to wear the mask, and we highly recommend that they wear those masks on the bus.
And for clarification, they'll still sit in their assigned seat.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, they will still be routed, and Durham Buses is working on seat assignments. So families are still seated together. And like I said, as they load in the morning, then they will load the back of the bus so they're not passing each other. And that will be their assigned seats as to how they load.
One of the, and Dr. Medford, you and I have visited, I appreciate so much your willingness to just pick up the phone and be available for questions. I know how much work you and the staff have put in on this. The administrators have put in a ton of work and thought. One of the things that comes to mind, and I know this was mentioned the other night in our committee meeting, is that the survey was thorough, it was very well done. It was done long enough ago that there have been some, it feels a little bit like the noose is tightening a little bit. And so I've spoken with you about this, but I would hope that we are very nimble with respect to being able, should we need to, quickly. And I know all of our literature says this, which I'm so pleased about. Be ready for changes, but I think it's a great plan, and I hope that we are ready to go to the 50-50 quickly should things continue in the way that they've done in the last couple of weeks, I guess.
And it's a fluid document, definitely.
Yes.
Everything is fluid. And I think, we mentioned in there, a lot of it will be based on the needs of the community as well. If we have a huge increase, in cases, we may have to look at other options. Also, the governor steps in and says, buildings are closing, that's going to cause us to change directions too. I will say, Felicia Lim this summer has provided training for our teachers. I would say, I feel better prepared, as if we're better prepared if that happens, that we can move into an online situation. But I still feel the importance of having those students in the building where we can provide them with lunch and breakfast, and we can provide them with some health services, mental health services, and just all those things. So,
And I do believe it came up in our subcommittee meeting with the board that you asked about a matrix. And I was able to kind of start putting a matrix together. Found a couple online. Make it work. It's obviously one of them was for the state of South Carolina. But finding a matrix that would work to give us a better understanding of when we needed to call off school, when incidents are low, medium, and high. Hopefully that will help us as well. So I just started getting that information today, though. So.
Dr. Robinson?
Yes.
What are your thoughts of perhaps having the COVID committee meet once a week? Things are changing so quickly. We're getting data all the time, new statistics, new cases. Is that something that you would recommend that we kind of have to stay on top of things?
We can, and that's kind of what Dan and I was talking about, because I'm not sure that we're going to vote this as a policy because it's going to be so fluid. We will have to have some flexibility if the bus situation isn't working like our plan. We don't need to reconvene the board every meeting to do that. So if we're going to to do that, we'll probably have more of a permanent COVID committee, because right now I know we have 3 board members and we have pretty well administration on there, but if we're going to start meeting weekly, we might need to figure out a different system, because we're going to pull administrators out of the building a lot. And so I'd have to think about how we would set that up, where we could have a committee that, without making it more of a board, at the same time having a fluid committee. So that would also, like I said, be putting our administrators out of the building more than they need to be. So.
One of the pleasant surprises, and you shared this with us, but it had not popped out to me because so many people are concerned about childcare, as we all are, but that 92% of parents said they've got that taken care of. That's really encouraging.
Dr. Medford or Dr. Robinson, would you address with the community the grading expectations now, if we would have to go to more of a AP schedule or an online format, that how that's going to be different than what, than maybe what the kids might have experienced at the end of last year?
I'll let Dr. Matt Robinson.
Yes, grading last year, we were kind of thrown to the wolves. I'll be honest, we were not prepared, but we were not unlike any other district in the state of Missouri or nationwide. In fact, the recommendation came from DESE, grades where they're at, do not fail a kiddo, offer that grace, and so that's what we move forward with. Any online learning that occurs this year will mirror what's happening in the classroom. Assignments will be the same, assessments will be the same. So there is a bigger accountability piece. Students that do not complete an assignment on that due date, it will fall back on the student handbook for that building as far as, missing assignments. So online will mirror what is happening in the classroom for physical instruction. There will not be any difference in it. What we are envisioning is teachers would record their lessons and then share those. Those will be then made available via the school's website, so students would have the ability to access those. Initially, we had talked about doing it live and online, but just due to the fact that if families choose to do that, online instruction, and you have 3 kiddos in the household, they might not have access to the internet during that time frame. So if we can offer it to them in a recorded manner, it would be closer to what's actually happening in the classroom rather than offering it via Zoom. So, but no, grading everything, the policy would be the same and would mirror what's taking place in the classroom. Thank you.
Okay, see, I'd like to make a couple comments and then we'll see where we go from there. Since this is a special meeting, we did not put this item as an item of public input. But there are 15 or 16 folks here tonight, 20, whatever there are. I think that since it is a special meeting, we can allow for public input, but a limited amount of time. We do want to hear, the majority of the board wants to hear from administrators that are here if they have comments and the work they've done, or public and where you are coming from. So if you have a comment you'd like to make it at a special meeting, I will accept it, but at a regular meeting, if you're not on the agenda, we'll kind of follow our board policy there. I hope you can understand and agree with that. But so if anybody has a comment that you want to make or input for the board to consider, I would be glad for that. Yeah, Doug?
I'm sorry, Mr. President, but I completely disagree with you. It's not on the agenda. This meeting was not set up to be a public forum. I had people ask me about coming to this meeting. I told them not to come because it was not on the agenda to have a public forum. I don't think that's fair to the people that didn't come because it wasn't on the agenda. I'm all about being transparent, but if we were going to have an open community meeting, we should have programmed this meeting to be that way. I don't think that's fair to the people that didn't come here to talk and ask questions because we did not have that on the agenda.
What's the pleasure of the board?
It's a valid point.
And as a board, we did not discuss it that way. The text that I got from you said we were just going to finalize that. It didn't say anything about having a public forum.
Would there be anything wrong with hearing from people?
I just voiced my opinion. Yeah, there's something wrong because there are other people that would have been here had that been on the agenda. So if you want to have a public forum, set another meeting. We don't vote on this tonight and make it a public forum.
I think we discussed that we're not voting anyway, as it's not a policy, so I would be all for having a public forum.
But that's not how the meeting was set up.
Doug, your point's valid. I don't disagree with that at all. As I stated, we did not list this as a meeting that would allow for public input, but I think that we do need to consider our public, but I don't want to put this decision off any other time and take more time on it when time is of the essence. So
This board needs to operate fairly, and that's not fair, Mr. President.
I hear what you're saying.
That's not fair.
I hear what you're saying. And having said that, the guests here this evening have heard that comment, and I agree with what you're saying, so we will not allow for public input. If you have something to provide information to the board, we would ask you to come up after our meeting and give us that. Email Dr. Robinson, Dr. Mefford, another administrator in the district, members of the board. We certainly will respond to those. But so I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you.
Thank you.
So
I think the public is very anxious to see this, and I think they've done, again, the whole committee, you've done a great job, a lot of thought. We all know that it's going to be a fluid document. It can change within the next 2 hours. So I think we can say bravo and go with it.
Our plan is to send this out tomorrow, get this up on the website, get this out tomorrow, because obviously we're asking parents to make choices on their learning style. We're going to need to find out pretty quickly who's going to be involved in transportation, who's going to be coming back to school. It might make changes on how we have to move teachers, kids, and any of those things. So our plan is to get the plan out, not to be redundant, but to get out tomorrow, most likely be in the afternoon. And then shortly after, we'll be sending the survey, and we want to make sure parents have enough time to look at the document, also choose their style. We'll probably give them a week, and we also have to have time that we're going to make phone calls to those people that don't respond, and then also to make sure we plan anything that needs planning. So it will be out very, very quickly. Like I said, I think it's a fairly complete document. I don't think it's going to be, it's not radically different than any of the others around the state. Every school is going to be a little bit unique. I do think we've tried to keep what we have heard from everybody. And it is going to be a very fluid document. We don't know, like I said, the health department can come out with some edict in a week or two, and the plan could change. So.
And also, Senator Shep has introduced a bill that's supposedly going to address all of this, but it won't come up before the Senate until after August 5th.
Right.
So it can change.
Will you clarify your expectations as far as when you send out that information to parents for their survey, when it needs to be returned by, when we need to have their decision?
Yes.
I don't know that we've talked about that yet.
No, what we thought about was if it was, let me look at my calendar real quick. If we get it out tomorrow, which that is our plan, if we get it out tomorrow, I believe we were going to be asking for information back to the 4th or 5th. Okay. Yeah, so we would be asking for information back by the 5th, and then our plan is that we'll obviously have people that will not fill out the document so we'll have to start having people call on the 6th and 7th, and that will give us a little bit of time, about 2 weeks before school, to give us, some time to figure out the buses, if we need to, 20% of our kindergarten classes aren't showing up, but 100% of our first grade classes show up. It could be that we may have to vary some things to keep the social distancing. So, and if we can do that, we will. So that would give us a little bit of time to make those adjustments still. So.
If I could, I'm just going to take it off. I hope nobody mind. I appreciate so much the administrators who called teachers this morning. A couple teachers called me after getting a call from their administrators. I really appreciate that happened, and feedback was sought. You know, how do you feel about this plan? That is an important step to all of us. However we get it, whether it's tonight or a week from tonight, I want teacher feedback. I think everyone feels the same way. I think teachers have had some input. I know they've had input on this, but now that things have, that there has been an uptick in cases, minds could have changed, and I would like to hear that. So however that happens, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, so I guess I would entertain a motion then that says that we approve the recommendation for reentry and allow the administration the latitude to change as needed. And that does not make this a policy, that just approves the recommendation.
More like an administrative procedure.
Right.
I move to approve the administrative.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the recommendation for reentry. Any other discussion?
I just want to say thanks to everybody that worked on it. I know you guys have spent hours of time researching and studying, so that does not fall short on me, that the amount of time that people put into that. I also want to tell all the teachers and the public that all of our email addresses are on the school's website. We love to hear from the public and from the teachers. This is a fluid document. It's an unprecedented time. I know everybody that worked on this put their full heart into that for our students and learning for our kiddos. So thanks for that. Reach out to us as you see something that we may have overlooked. And I appreciate the administration for it, definitely for all the work, and Dr. Robinson for what you've done.
Any other discussion, Doug?
Just for clarification, I have nothing against the teachers, and thank you for coming and spending your evening with us. My point was, we just need to make sure we run these meetings correctly. That was my point. I think public input is huge, and this is a very touchy subject. I mean, everybody's been dealing with it in everybody's lives for months, and it's going to continue. I completely understand that. A public forum would be great at some point, but as we need to get this passed so we can get some numbers in the school. So I didn't do it because I'm against anybody. Just want to make sure we do it the right way.
I completely agree with you, Doug. We need to follow all those procedures.
Other discussion? Okay, so the motion is that we approve the recommendation for reentry and allow the administration to change it as needed. All in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously.
No, we don't.
There's nothing else on our agenda, so I will officially adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, board, for all your work on the administration.
And so I do appreciate all that.